about as crazy as Anna in this movie. Hey there, creepy peeps. I'm Nightmare Maven. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I talk about horror movies, books, and all spooky things all year round. So if you end up liking this video, you should subscribe. Emma from Spooky Astronauts and I covered Possession for a Does This Offend You episode a while back now. And we definitely had our own interpretations of the movie, although Does This Offend You is a bit more of a film analysis, or it's closer to film analysis than it is to a movie review. So when this movie was requested for me to review by one of my patrons, I figured I'd approach this more in an opinionated style. I'm gonna kind of approach it in a more casual way anyway, because I didn't not enjoy myself the first time I watched this movie, but it's a super intense film and it's not one that I would watch unless prompted. So the first time I watched it was for Does This Offend You, and that was the reason. And this time I'm watching it because it was requested of me by a patron. And that's, I think if it weren't for those two things, I probably still would not have seen this movie. So this time around, I sought out more reviews of the film, like seeing other people's interpretations of what's going on, and watching the movie through the lens of these interpretations from other people across the internet definitely affected my viewing this second time, I think. So Possession essentially follows a marriage that has fallen apart, and the 2-hour runtime shows the destruction and madness that follows. Not to mention the trauma inflicted on Mark and Anna's child through this mess. One thing I have in common with the first time I watched this movie and the second viewing is that this film is exhausting. I think it's by design. It's definitely not the type of film that's gonna make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. But I feel like even though the movie is not from the perspective of Bob, Mark and Anna's child with a very unfortunate name for a child, it kind of feels like we're viewing from his perspective, or at least from a child's perspective, watching our parents literally go mad and unhinged and just melt down. It's like terrifying and exhausting and traumatic. I like to think I understood the movie a lot more this time around, and I could see how like the major themes kind of played into the plot and the way things were shot and the way the characters behaved a lot more than the first time. The first time the movie just felt chaotic to me, which I also think is kind of by design. It's all part of the madness that these characters are experiencing. But this time around, I could see how the outward expression of madness from Mark and Anna both are meant to be kind of like outward expressions of a marriage ending, especially one that's ending due to infidelity. Seeing it in that way, their very erratic behavior makes a lot more sense, because they go from like fighting and beating each other up and bleeding to almost being civil to being in love, and it's a whirlwind for 2 hours. They just oscillate through those emotions. Anna says at one point in the film that she is the maker of her own evil, and we see her literally birth her own evil in that horrible and honestly darkly iconic subway tunnel scene. And I feel like it's the crux for everything happening in this movie. Anna is definitely at the very least responsible for her own actions, you know, leaving her kid alone for too long, having an affair, while still kind of being in love with her husband and kind of acting erratic on that front, like not really sure what she wants. And then there's the whole thing with the doppelgangers, which I'm gonna be honest, when I first watched this movie, did not understand. Didn't try to understand. There was too much else going on. They're meant to be idealized versions of Anna and Mark, like, and each of them, for the real Anna and Mark, are what they want their partner to be. So it's no accident that the movie ends with doppelganger Mark going to Helen's house, where Bob incidentally happens to be also. It's meant to show that this cycle is now going to be repeating, which is why we hear the sounds of, like, you know, things exploding, the world literally just coming apart outside, and Bob starts going crazy and telling Helen not to open the door. And then in a really just like intense scene, he goes and drowns himself in the tub rather than face this trauma all over again. This film is frenzied and crazy and so long. It feels like an achievement getting through it twice now. And it's a surprisingly disturbing film given that there really aren't that many scenes with like outright gore or, you know, really intense things happening necessarily. It's hard to explain. If you've seen the movie, maybe you understand what I mean. It feels like a lot of the stuff is kind of like internal, like happening in people's heads. But there's, I don't know, there's like an intensity that comes through the movie, and it's very disturbing without being like outwardly so, I think. And I think that's the best thing this movie has going for it. But I feel like the movie has fallen into a category for me where it's like, it's a recognizable title before I've even seen it, because I've seen people mention it on the internet here and there, and it's on multiple internet lists. But when I finally see it, I don't necessarily feel like a better horror fan for having seen it. That's not to say it's a bad movie. I know tons of people love this movie. Obviously totally valid. I just don't think it was for me. So if you've seen Possession, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. I would love to hear your thoughts on this one, because all the reviews I read are so varied. So I'd love to know what you guys think specifically. If you ended up liking this video, you should be subscribed if you're not already. If you enjoyed this video, I mean, why not? I will see you Monday with a new video. Until then, stay strange. Bye.